Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. I'll let Wen go ahead and kick things off here in a moment, but before we get started, if you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, just want to let you know you do have a control panel available to you, and you can submit questions at any time throughout the session, and we will address them at the end of today's session. So please send in your questions, and hope you guys enjoy. Take it away, Wen.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sarah. So first off, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. My name is Wen. I'm the CEO of Smarking. We're a tech company based in San Francisco, focused on really helping parking assets owners and operators to maximize the business return of their assets. Now, today we're very fortunate to have an amazing panel with us. I'll do a brief intro for everybody, and then we'll dive right in. So Peter Opoku is a asset manager at LaSalle Investment Management, overseeing more than $1 billion of assets for the firm, primarily multifamily, and he is also the designated parking asset manager within LaSalle organization. Fun facts about Peter: he actually earned his master's degree from the MIT Center for Real Estate years ago. We had a couple of years overlap. Later on, not only he is overseeing the real estate assets for LaSalle, he's also an entrepreneur in heart and always on the cutting edge of the technologies. And he has a special love for parking. So we can always nerd out with Peter when it comes to parking. Also with us, we have amazing industry thought leader, Todd Tucker, who's running the expansion for Arrive, one of the leading mobility platform in North America. And Todd has been a literal veteran and a veteran in terms and a seasoned parking executive in the industry for years. Started in the operational side, later on got into tech, and he pretty much knows everything, and everybody knows him in the industry. Fun fact about Todd: he's actually the first PhD that I know of that actually formed a thesis about parking and really earned his PhD. So lots of respect there, Todd. I guess I've already introduced myself. I'm an automotive engineer turned entrepreneur, started Smarking years ago, and really we're committed to bringing best technologies into the industry. With that being said, our topic today is really these days so many buzzwords about dynamic pricing. Everybody's talking about it. We all know it's the holy grail of parking, but how do we really leverage it off? And more importantly, how does it even work? So that is the key things that we're going to discuss today with folks who actually had hands-on experience seeing how it works, making it work in the past years. Before we jump into the specific dynamic pricing topic, let's just quickly take a look at where the industry is. We all know COVID happened last year, and it has been really rough. Let's just take a look at where the market is and then see where dynamic pricing really fit in. So for everybody's information, here at Smarking, one of our very specialty is data. We work with more than 2,500 sites across North America, and we've been synthesizing the industry data from everybody who we've been working together with in the past years, and look through what happened last year. What we have gathered is really from the entire 2020 throughout the year, we were essentially more than 52% down from a revenue standpoint for off-street locations, which is absolutely devastating. But we all know now that coming to 2021, with vaccines rolling out, we all anticipate the accelerated recovery of post-pandemic growth. On the off-street part, we can also share that it was a little better off. It was 37.86% down. So let's actually take a quick look with this high level. Let's take a quick look at what is really kind of sort of the throughout the year dynamics, and then set the stage to see again how when it comes to technology coming to help, how it really does it for us. So this is the user interface for Smarking's industry benchmark. It's one organic part of our business intelligence platform. Again, here we're sampling 960 plus locations randomly from all locations that we're working with for off-street garages and surface lots. We have different options, off-street, on-street, and just for everybody's information, we can also go down to each different region. But from a North America perspective, as you can see, beginning of 2020, market was good. We were up year over year. March, things went down. April, we touched the valley point. From a revenue standpoint, near more than 90% of business gone. That was a rough time for all of us. Q3 was good. We had a good recovery across the board, but then clearly the impact of the second wave was real. We exited the year down 63%. We can see that from occupancy and the transaction standpoint as well. But again, all in all, this is aggregated for a year. Last year compared to 2019, we were down 53%. And same goes with on-street. So that really puts us, everybody in parking, the entire industry, onto to a certain extent, a hard spot, right? Like, we need business, and business is not there for us. Now, what do we do? How do we come back? Is what we really wanted to get on. So I would say, while we all anticipate certain normal, let's say certain recovery of normal, but some of the things just have fundamentally changed in parking. We all know that. Some of the high levels I'll touch on here, and I would love to get Peter and Todd's input as well, see if this is what you're seeing as well. So essentially what we have been observing and intaking is per survey by JLL, actually this Q1, saying that before the pandemic, 75% of workforce, they drive and park coming to the office every day. But post-pandemic, out of that 70, the rest quarter is before the pandemic, they were already working from home, right? So post-pandemic, out of that 75% of the commuters, 50% of them actually anticipate a rather hybrid or flexible mode, 2-3 days in office. That's one thing that we have observed, or we have heard, we have been hearing. On the other hand, we all also probably get certain exposure of the new dynamics that all of a sudden consumers are ditching public transportation, and we saw that entire ride share was plummeted last year, and a lot of people switched back to the private cars. There was a news article about how some of the analysts in Wall Street did research and anticipate a surge of 8% of private car ownership coming into this year. Even the millennials have started buying cars. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to drive their own car. So a lot of these factors come into play, and they would impact how people think about parking naturally, right? So here I would want to ask Peter and then Todd, how do you guys see the latest trend when it comes to mobility, parking, commercial real estate, and then how does this impact how the parking world evolves in the coming year? Please go ahead, Peter.
So, from the multifamily side, to your point about increased car ownership, we're having a lot of residents now ask for, hey, can I have another parking space? Because yeah, people are now, buying cars, assets that we acquired for their location, close to public transport. People are now asking for parking spaces, ask the, hey, is there parking? Can I get parking? Can I get parking? So there's this demand for parking on the multifamily side that didn't exist before. And so, that kind of plays into the commuter story. And then for other garages, so for example, if you have a garage that benefits greatly from overflow, if there isn't a garage that's full, now you're not getting any overflow. And so all this revenue is lost, and you need to figure out, smart ways to get money, because there are cars out there, and with the current pricing, regime that's in place, all these guys will just drive past your garage. You see $25, you're just going to drive past. They know there's no demand, but they're not seeing the prices change to match it. So, there are a lot of things that need to change to make this industry more efficient, and I think dynamic pricing is one of them.
Thank you very much, Peter. Todd, what is your end of thinking in terms of how the world has changed, and how does that impact the parking world?
Yeah, I think look, I think that Peter makes some great points. The entire parking world is trying to find the fastest on-ramp back to normal that it can. And I think what we're perceiving, along with Peter, is that folks are on the other side of this willing to take a lot more bets and more risks on trying things in the e-commerce space and online sales, adopting new channels, adopting new ways of transacting. And that pace has increased by a factor of 10x across all of our real estate partners, parking operators, and everyone. So that's a welcome sight. I think that brings complexity in terms of how do you manage the data that it gets created? How do you administratively handle it all? Mm-hmm. And you manage rates and control in that kind of an environment where maybe it was already confusing and complicated before, and now it's 10 times as complicated now. So having tools to do that is important. I think also, and Peter kind of touched on this, I think we're seeing a trend with consumers and users demanding more flexible options. And so one example would be an area of monthly parking. So we all know that, unfortunately, some people are going to adopt a maybe work from home more often type of an approach. Obviously doing that right now, but we hope that people start going back to the offices. But for the interim, folks seem to want to have products that are aimed towards a kind of a mixed model. So maybe I go to work 3 days of the week, and maybe I stay home 2 days a week. So I pay for a full month monthly if I don't have to do that, and I don't want to pay by day, but I want to continue to drive. So having a flex monthly pass, and those can be done, administered through traditional monthly management programs, but they're probably more easily managed and administered through online e-commerce type program channels. So I think Peter also touched on this. There's some sort of a delta that various theories exist on where the outcome is, and some people are going to. Are there more people going to be parking because they're driving and there's new cars entering the market? I hope so. There's lots of people that are now working from home though, so and then that would have taken public transit, or maybe they would have driven. Somewhere after all, the net of that is the net impact of more or less parkers. We think it's going to be more. Trends seem to indicate that. Peter's comments seem to indicate that. So we're excited for where that may lead, and I think that dynamic pricing engines and administrative tools like Smarking and others are going to be kind of table stakes to be able to make this function effectively. And I would just say, last point, as an early point in recovery, in New York City, for example, my regional leader there shared with me that kind of almost without fail, any of the sites there that are using dynamic pricing engines are substantially up and outperforming relative to folks that aren't. So some good data there that's fairly new and fresh.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you. Very comprehensive insights. If I understand what you guys just said, it really comes down to the major point. On one hand, the world will come back to normal this year. We all anticipate that, much more confidence than last year. But again, the parking is going to be different from several perspectives. Kind of sort of the good problems to have or good things is, on one hand, as Peter said, even residential parking for multifamily side, people, there's anticipated to be a lot more demand. On the other hand, there was a switch of consumer behavior from public transportation, rideshare, to just in general drive and park private cars. However, the challenge could also come in as, because of the shift of commuter behavior, instead of 5 days throughout a week coming in every day, 2-3 days in at home. On the other hand, and before people were paying straight up $300-400 or $200-300 straight up monthly parking, but now what? No one would have wanted to pay for that full month if they're not coming in full month, right? On the other hand, everybody would go to everywhere you go, you would drive and park, and then how does that really play along together with the current pricing scheme in terms of what we have today? So how do parking asset owners and operators capitalize, instead of just being put onto a let's say a position with all of a sudden changes, not being able to handle that, but more capitalize on these changes and then capture the new demand, really position to win? What that is going to be our focus in the next section of our discussion. And really everything to a certain extent comes down to the very, very key component, which is pricing. So we talked a little bit how the world has changed and how parking world would have to adapt and then evolve. But then when it comes to how does this really more one level deeper change how we think about pricing before the pandemic, now how we think about pricing when it comes to parking post-pandemic? What are some of the thoughts you guys have in terms of what do we need to do, or what are the biggest challenges when it comes to using the pre-pandemic pricing for post-pandemic parking management? Would love to hear some of the thoughts from both of Peter. Please go ahead.
Sure. So, I mean, I think dynamic pricing definitely. What's going on is the world has changed, and if parking doesn't change, people are just going to lose. So one of the easiest changes is to just decentralize, how pricing is done, versus or democratize how pricing is done, pardon me, versus just having this static, pricing model where you change it 4 times a year, or you change it, twice a day. You've got your morning rate and then your afternoon rate. Why not change it throughout the entire day? Demand for parking changes all through the day, and so pricing should change. As a multifamily asset manager, we use dynamic pricing. We use, a lot of these real page tools, and that, creates efficiency in the markets. So having dynamic pricing introduced into parking will be huge. It'll be a huge, efficiency boost. Folks, the operators are not going to be spending time, working on, hey, what's this parking garage pricing at? So maybe I got to change it from, $20 to $15 because their 2-hour rate is slightly lower than mine. Well, let the machine determine that for you, and then use your time to go get more monthly, parkers, or try and, grow the garage's reach. So, I mean, that and also, I think Todd mentioned this earlier, folks who are going to be going to the office on different schedules. So I'm not going to be in the office 30 days a month. I'm going to be in there, 12 days a month. Parking needs to change to meet that as well. So those are some of the 2 things that I see coming down the pike as we.
Very cool. So essentially, it sounds like you're saying on the commercial or residential real estate side, people are already doing dynamic pricing for the apartment buildings or apartment suites or the office lease to a certain extent. Real page or so provided a tool as one thing. So this is to a certain extent dynamic pricing for parking is expected from the landlords. On the other hand, thank you. And on the other hand, it sounds like because of all of these changes, landlord would anticipate much more advanced tool when it comes to transient parking side of things, that the rates are not going to be reset every quarter or every year, but rather following the market dynamics is what kind of sort of your perspective is. Okay, so Todd, what do you think when it comes to, with all the changes in the world, when it comes to the pre-pandemic pricing and post-pandemic pricing? What do you think is?
Well, I think I think that there's probably no secret out there that Arrive partnered with Smarking some time ago, and we use Smarking pretty exclusively as our dynamic pricing partner when we get requests for these. And we did that for reasons of we believe we were going through gyrations like a lot of other firms do. Do we build it ourselves, or do we partner? And we decided to partner with Smarking was smarter, because we think operators and asset owners like the separation of powers, and other reasons. But as you know all too well, Wen, so that automatically, is there a bias there? Well, we did everything in our power to disprove the efficacy of Smarking as we did that analysis. I think there were a lot of folks that were really surprised that no matter how many academically rigorous tests we put Smarking through and put the systems through, it kept coming back resoundingly that Smarking's effects via dynamic pricing at sites were robust in terms of increasing revenue. We did our best to see if it was coming at the expense of neighboring garages and cannibalization, and that seemed to be minimally present with limited statistical significance. And I think that the curious last point there is that the more rate changes you did, and we know we went through some gyrations there about how many rate changes that Smarking can do, and in some places we were doing thousands a day. It was interesting to see that the more rate changes that happened, the more robust the revenue effects were. So when I step back from that and put myself in a layperson perspective, it seems that the more opportunities you have to change rate, the more opportunities you have to capture consumers and satisfy whatever they're looking for. And incredible learning, I think, that we picked up through our relationship with Smarking that I think answers your question.
Thank you, Todd. So essentially you're saying not only, back to your earlier point, dynamic pricing in this new world is expected, it's a table stake, but also the technology that we have been partnering up and built together, it's battle tested. We've obviously seen a lot of success results pre-pandemic. Even throughout 2020, I think we have an opportunity later on in this session to share with folks that it's clear that it's working, and it's not just smoke and mirror. It's real there. We're bringing real money into the parking garages for the asset owners and operators. It is basically the case, right? That's where the world is today, and yeah, everybody should have it. It shouldn't be just the buzzword. Cool. So, but then when it comes to that, I guess folks would naturally ask, okay, how does this thing actually work? You guys talk about dynamic pricing this, dynamic pricing that. How does it actually work? What is the mechanism? What is the secret there? What is really going on there? So I think we're going to designate a few minutes just to talk about that. I'll kick this off from kind of sort of a general sense from Smarking's perspective. I would love to hear from your perspectives, Peter and Todd, in the real estate world, in the mobility, in the online sales mode. How do you guys view it? So from Smarking's perspective, the concept of dynamic pricing is no difference than its concept in hotel and airline industries, right? Essentially, it's demand supply. Conventionally, when we price parking as 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, 4 hour, and evening rates in that scheme, I think we could get by before pandemic, where yeah, there's plenty of demand. We just sit there and then collect them. Then that's pretty comfortable. But now in this new environment, especially in this new environment, comes to the case that where there's only so much demand, and we wanted to capture them all, not just the people who wanted to park 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, but really, how about I wanted to park for 5 hours, 6 hours? How do we make sure that demand curve is not just a rough sketch, but more of right on point? Doesn't matter what kind of consumer needs there are, we can always maximize the yield. We can always maximize the revenue. That's basically the ultimate goal, right? So the way with today's technology, machine learning technology, we can do them before we cannot. It's again also the same thing as hotel airline industries, that you don't have to manually set it, right? All we need to do is let the algorithm come in, take in all the historical data from your parks, from your online sales channels, all millions of real-time transaction data. And then what the algorithm would do is, just like how we human beings would want it to do but don't have time to do, is to synthesize on the changes of pricing, cost, changes of revenue, and then really derive that demand curve. And then based off that knowledge, the algorithm would push out hundreds of new rates every hour for each particular parking site, in order to, on one hand, test the market very, very quickly, what's really going on. On the other hand, when the opportunity shows up, we capture it. So I'll give a couple of very simple examples here, just to make sense out of this. Let's say when the demand is high. Today, our daily max, let's say for a location, is 20 bucks. If the demand is high, then we should push for 20 bucks and 50 cents, 21, 22, and see what happens. But if we're doing it manually, it's impossible, right? We don't have that much of manpower. Today's world, we all wanted to do more with less. How do we make that happen? Let the computer do the work. Human beings set the box, floor, ceiling, operational hours, let computer do the work, and then test it out to see, is 21 going to give us more? Is $22 going to get us more? Very, very quickly. Another scenario is when the demand is low. Let's say there's only so much demand, everybody wants some. In terms of from a competitive standpoint, how do we make that happen? Well, if that is the case, then the consumers are going to be, let's just be blunt. Consumers like myself, I'm cheap. I wanted to get the parking option, just whichever gives me the lowest price, I'm going to go for it in the zone. So how do we make that happen? We don't want to go just get the race to the bottom. We wanted to say, okay, very, very quickly by testing the consumer's reaction. If right now, let's say 2 hour rate is $10, how about we go $9.50, see if that'll make a difference? How about just $9? If that makes a difference, we kind of sort of double down for the time being. But again, the whole key is this is a very fast changing way of managing the pricing, and statistically speaking, across the board, over a time period of a month, a year, maybe the average price stays exactly the same as before. Before you implement dynamic pricing, each transaction average, you may still get 15 bucks or whatnot, but in reality is you're maximizing your opportunity to get the transactions coming into your location is kind of sort of key. So at the end of the day, yeah, we wanted to save time, we wanted to reduce cost, but more importantly, really bring in the revenue. It doesn't matter if the demand is high, which we push for the yield, or when the demand is low, we get more demand, we get more volume, is what the computer algorithm could do for us. So that's kind of sort of my view of how this works. And Peter and Todd, do you guys have additional thoughts in terms of what is your view on how this whole thing works in your experience in the past 2 years working with this? How would you describe it?
I mean, this is like asking the creator, telling the creator that, hey, that's not how it works. This is how it works. When I can't add anything else to what you said other than it's as easy as you explained it. Look, we and I'm sure we're going to get to this later, but we've tried this. It's worked. and it's a no-brainer. I mean, if there's an opportunity to capitalize on demand in the market and you can set rates to, make that extra juice, why not? And now there's technology that facilitates that. So no, I don't have anything else to add.
Thank you, Peter.
I agree with Peter. I think obviously when you know your product better than Peter or I could ever know. I would just say that the other point to something Peter just said is that if people are on the fence about at least trying this, and I know that you made it extremely easy for people to do trials of these systems with no obligation. So being able to just get in there and try it and take it for a test drive, like anything else in life, is to uncover a lot of things. And I think also, if you didn't say it, the access to the data that's created from this is just, it's like striking oil in Texas. I mean, it's, the value is off the chain. So two additional points there.
I love it. Appreciate that perspective. Just one thing to add on to that, Todd, is exactly as you said. For our audience, folks, what years of parking data you have in your possession, those are gold mines. And we talk all the time about how Netflix and Amazon mining the data and they really benefit their own business. This is our time. This is our opportunity. You have that gold mine, and we can provide the technology to help you to mine that and then turn that into that data into live revenue, is kind of how I would put it. And also, as both Todd and Peter touched on, that at the end of the day, human beings got to focus on what we're good at, essentially just set the boundaries and then really deal with actual customer relations and all that. And then when we drop the box, let the computer do the computation work. The benefit of, I'd say, one last thing I'll touch on here is we started this whole dynamic pricing thing on online platforms for a reason, because it is so much faster to get the consumer responses once you set it up on the platforms like ParkWiz, Best Parking, Arrive has, that the moment you push out new rates, consumers are going to respond so quickly. And that's why we can collect a huge amount of data and then really leverage off that and then create good results. Everybody talks about big data. This is how we turn big data into money. And I'd say, yeah, that applies across the board for all kinds of assets. Now, if we just go one more level deeper in terms of when it comes to how exactly it works, besides from a higher level results perspective, I thought to provide just a little color here, just so that we can really look at it under the hood and then see, okay, there's really no secret here. It's a very familiar concept that we've all have seen in many other industries. This is just, we're bringing it into parking. So three things I'll touch on. One is, we say it's an algorithm thing. We say it's basically, Todd touched on the data you have. It's like, yeah, oil in Texas. It's basically what you're really trying to leverage off. But the reason we need that data is this. The reason we need that data is the way the algorithm works, it learns from patterns. It's pattern recognition. The more data points you have regarding when you change the price this way or that way, how consumers are going to respond, and then the net result, computing the total revenue, how that is going to change, is the fundamentals of how this algorithm works. So the more data points we can push out, test, and then collect, the better off we are. That's why, and this is a little secret to let everybody in, that at Smarking we qualify locations. If your location has more than 50 transactions per month at your location on this one online platform, we say it's a good location because you have enough data points for it to ingest in the data and then really do the work effectively. Within a short time period, the algorithm will ramp up very quickly and then start performing. If, let's say, it's just one transaction a day or so, unfortunately, it actually does not work well, and because we just don't have enough data to consume, and we would actually recommend against, just to flip this on right now. Probably there is more work for us to do to gain visibility, for you to work with good partners like Arrive to really get the location's visibility out there. And then once we have enough data, we get onto it. Same thing as how many other technology companies would do this. Second part I thought it was important to touch on is, again, this comes back to, okay, we say when the demand is high, we want to push for the yield. When the demand is low, we want to get volume. How does that exactly really happen? And what is the consumer side of the experience of this? We touched on briefly, but really the difference comes before dynamic pricing supplied by Smarking and Arrive, and in Peter's sites, you have probably five rates throughout the day, right? 1 hour rates, 2 hour rates, 3 hour rates, 5 hour rates, daily max, that's it. After we deploy this, the algorithm would just do everything automatically, set and forget for you, that every hour we push out hundreds of new rates to really test the water, statistically trying to get the most. Doesn't matter if the demand is high or low. That is the drastic difference between the two rate schemes. And then imagine if it updates every hour compared to before, it updates every quarter. It makes a huge difference because marketplace changes every minute these days. The third part I would touch on is people would say, okay, I set this thing up. How am I going to compare to my competitors? How am I going to manage it? I'm not going to just let it run by itself. I'm going to lose control. Like, this is like, how do I anticipate that? So the good part about the dynamic pricing solution that we have put together here is there's two major components. It's a combination of human supervision and computers just do the work. Computers work for us, not the other way around, meaning that we can draw the box. People who ever manage or own assets, let's say if you're a portfolio manager or location manager, you can set the ceiling floor of the pricing. You can have all kinds of parameters configured to that particular location, because we understand the managers knows the best. You have insights over the particular site, and we want to make sure within this box that you draw, then the algorithm goes crazy, just do everything it could to play within that playground to make it happen. So it's a set and forget model. You don't have to worry about, when you're sleeping, the algorithm is working, it's making money for you. But from the get-go, in the beginning, you set the parameters, and then we're all set. So I wanted to pause here and just see if there's anything from Peter and Todd you guys would like to add on from your experience, how it worked, from what you have seen. What are some of the additional thoughts over here in terms of how it works underneath the hood? Any thoughts, Todd? Anything? Go ahead.
Nothing else on my end. I mean, I think, you guys have made this, very straightforward and easily to integrate with the systems that we have, and also, these aggregator platforms that we use for parking. So no, it's very, very seamless integration whenever we've had to deploy it.
Cool. Peter's a high level guy. He's like, you guys make it work. I'll just see the numbers go. Go ahead, Todd.
Mine actually might be a part statement, part question. When just way back when, in the Wayback Machine, when we were building our APIs to one another, I know we broke each other's operating systems a couple times trying to figure out exactly how many rate changes can you do in a day before the building crumbles down. I think is it really just 400 plus rate options now? I mean, I've seen you push upwards of double, triple that in a 24-hour period across our channels. And I know that we built Rails that support that now. And is that something that still exists, or you can continue to test the upward boundaries of how many rate changes you can make in a given period?
Yeah, I think it's to answer your question, Todd, that is absolutely a continued evolvement in terms of how much more advanced we can get over time. Because our understanding, on one hand, there's plenty of lower hanging fruit. We want to get this going first, which we did in the past 2 years, and battle tested, deployed in over 10 cities, hundreds of sites, and it's all great results. On the other hand, we continue to see more opportunities showing up, because today's world, Todd, to be honest, that asset owners like Peter, they're trying to look for so many different avenues to increase the revenue. And there are going to be all kinds of channel partners that they could build with good people like yourself. And with that, from the owner side, from the operator side, a centralized platform that can help them to reduce the workload or the burden on managing all of the pricing schemes in different avenues, different directions are going to be key. And we anticipate continue to evolve on that. And I remember earlier we talked about this when it comes to the kind of sort of the combination and separation for the kind of sort of sales perspective, the pricing perspective, and the ownership perspective. There is going to be continued work to do to make this whole ecosystem actually work and complete, right? So you want to touch on that a little bit, just to, from that perspective, what are some of your thinking? But yeah, to answer your question, this is going to have to be a continued development. We're going to continue to have to build the technology with more scalability. But yeah, plenty of lower hanging fruit right now.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I would say too, just a comment, observation. I mean, I'm blessed to arrive to get to sit at tables with really smart people, smarter than me, and learn about what's coming. Big platform partners that we work with, big scary names that we all tremble when we see their logo. You know, a lot of the automakers, companies like that, they're really like base model expectations on getting everything in parking and transportation digitized and consumable through their own platforms. And recommendation engines and dynamic pricing engines are really kind of just, you know, foundational for what they're expecting. So, you know, if you want to be on bigger platforms, selling Apple Maps, Google Maps, Waze, things like that, you really got to start considering these things sooner versus later, because you know, competition that's using the systems will quickly outpace you as it relates to performance in those networks.
Thank you, Todd. Makes perfect sense. I know you guys built amazing partnerships with big sites like Ticketmaster, like as you said, Porsche, who just produced the new app with you guys. I think, yeah, amazing opportunities like that, always bringing the demand into the parking garages, and everybody loves that. But yeah, when it comes to that, dynamic pricing is another very important component to make sure that the experience on the consumer side is absolutely optimized from a pricing standpoint, right? So the last piece we're going to touch on how this whole thing really works is, I think this is Todd, where your PhD thesis come in. Again, years of work with tremendous amount of data, and one biggest concern our industry market always has is, okay, you say you use online sales, you say you use dynamic pricing. Wouldn't that cannibalize my drive-out business? Wouldn't that make my business worse off? How come you're going to make me more money? How do we answer that question, Todd, from your academic research based on?
Yeah, I won't drone on too much about my PhD thesis here. Most doctoral students and PhDs are in love with their work too much, so I won't spend too much time on it. But look, the study was generated and born out of my years as parking operator, and then on the other side, my years at Arrive. So having one foot kind of in the operational asset owner side and the other foot in the technology side, I started to find myself at the kind of the nexus of some complex questions that I really didn't have good answers for. And when I first started at Arrive, I used to hear that cannibalization argument all the time. And as I started to research and look at other industries that had wrestled with that cannibalization argument and where they netted out, the research just made me more and more interested. And there was nothing in our space of any shape, form, or function to kind of test these theorems. So I'm happy to share my research with anybody. It's available online, it's published, but really comes down to is adding online channels creates, adding new sales channels in general. What you're seeking there is an academic concept known as availability effect. You're trying to create a bigger pie share, essentially, by creating new customers without the loss of customers, or material loss of customers in the other sectors. And so we were pleased to see in our research, which again went over a significant period of time with a lot of observations in partnership with a major parking operator in the U.S. who was kind enough to work with us on the data, and we were happy to see that the strongest of the number of hypotheses we tested, number one was that just their cannibalization wasn't occurring. So we were normalizing and watching garages on this side of the street versus that side of the street, and it was all revenue lift. So that's all relevant to a point for our conversation here. Just the simple fact that fear of adding online channels is not a cannibalization event, at least to the extent that people may believe it is. I mean, you've got to be managed properly. You've got to have the right tools, which I think is in the context of this conversation. Things like Smarking, other dashboard BI tools that you can cobble together. As long as you're managing it and watching it, there's nothing generally more than upside. Just last point is that this study was so interesting, I think, to a lot of folks, myself, some folks at Temple University in Philadelphia and the University of Minnesota, that we have a V2 that we're working on, which is going to layer in specifically dynamic pricing as an effect on these hypotheses that we tested. So we're excited to see where that goes. And we did our own little A/B testing mini academic studies inside Arrive, as I mentioned earlier, and those all seem to bode well for the hypothesis that we have, is that dynamic pricing is going to be a positive moderator for the positive effects we saw in this first study. That's probably more than I wanted to hear on this doctoral thesis.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we can talk about the anecdotal examples, but studies like this really puts things into perspective with statistic important data, right? So always appreciate people doing research for the parking industry, and just amazed to see that it is actually possible, and then we have the hypothesis validated. But I would just add on here, Todd, from a post-pandemic world perspective, it is, I would say, common sense to me that consumers like us, we're going to anticipate the contactless experience, flexible experience. And when it comes to that, clearly today, I'm sure you're seeing from the data perspective as well, if I'm going to some places, I wanted to book the parking a lot earlier than before. And on the flip side, if I have to choose public transportation, rideshare, and parking, years ago, we were really all worried about rideshare, but I'd say, oh my God, the world just flipped. And then all of a sudden, everybody's like, okay, how do we drive to that place? And when it comes to those needs, in my view, cannibalization comes in this fashion that there's so much demand, and we have an opportunity to capitalize on, let's say, the transfer demand from other mobility modes. If you do not capitalize it by making it flexible, contactless, and really attractive from a pricing standpoint, your competitors are going to get it. Or parking does not get it. Some other mobility mode is getting. This is the time. This is like the opportunity presented by itself, the silver lining out of the whole damn pandemic. But I think, yeah, there's no excuse that we do not capitalize on these opportunities by going digital, going dynamic, and all that. But none of that, put all of that aside, Peter, wanted to just understand a little bit more from your perspective. What is your thinking on cannibalization in terms of different revenue stream from a landlord ownership standpoint?
So I guess, I mean, I think to your point, what's being cannibalized is that alternative, mode of transportation. So if someone's going to park, Uber and Lyft are losing money, and the owner of the parking garage is gaining that money if these folks have to park. But I mean, I think that's where that's happening. If everyone goes on this dynamic pricing platform, or if everyone starts using Smarking, then there isn't going to be a case of cannibalization, because then the playing field is normalized.
Right.
That's kind of what happens on the multifamily side. Almost everyone uses YieldStar, and so if I'm losing you to a competitor, it's truly because their rates are lower than mine, and it's open source. I know what their rates are. It changes every day, and so in that sense, since it's level playing ground, you're not truly cannibalizing revenue. Someone's just going to the other party because they're on the same platform as you, but it's cheaper to go park somewhere else. So I wouldn't call it cannibalization. It would be cannibalization if the parking garage next to mine sticks to using their seasonal pricing changing, and I'm using dynamic pricing, and I'm just getting all the traffic in my garage. Now that's where it's going to be cannibalization, and I think the market is becoming a little bit efficient to the point where these opportunities don't exist that much.
I hear you. Thank you for that perspective. So if you have the opportunity to get onto the cutting edge technology, so better just get onto it is kind of sort of your view in order not to be cannibalized by the others, but beating the market is everybody's goal in a way, right? Thank you very much, Peter. Yeah, awesome. So last part, folks, before we get into the Q&A or jump off, we wanted to quickly touch on really, okay, we talked a whole lot about the concepts, how it works. What is the real impact? What is the result? Peter.
Sure. So, I mean, these are some case studies for deals that I'm familiar with, and just to take a step back. So, as an asset manager during COVID, try to figure out, hey, how do I grow revenue in this environment? How do I increase cash flow in an environment where multifamily occupancy is, dwindling, office occupancy is dwindling, and it's having effects on parking? How do I boost this? So I hopped on a call with the Smarking team. They're like, hey, we've got this dynamic pricing tool, allows you to, play off of the demand in certain markets. We've tested it in a couple of markets you've got assets in. Let's give it a shot. So I gave it a shot, and 754% revenue boost. It's not a joke. It's real. It's meaningful. And for a property that will trade on an open market for 4 cap or even like a 3.5 cap, that's over 600K of additional value that you're introducing to an asset just because you turn on a switch that people can park at your garage different times of the day and pay what makes sense at that point. Like it's a no-brainer. So following off of that, had a New York property on the Upper West Side, and it's managed by SP Plus, and they said, hey, there's an opportunity here. A lot of the roads are closed up on the Upper West Side. Maybe we should do dynamic pricing there and the team run with it. And 43% increase in revenue, it's meaningful. And you multiply this by whatever portfolio of assets that you have. That's true value that you're creating just by introducing dynamic pricing. And I'm happy to, if anyone wants to reach out to me after this, I'm happy to talk to you about how simple this is to set up. It's a no-brainer. It really is.
Thank you so much, Peter. Thank you. And yeah, I wanted to just add on to that when it comes, Todd actually touched on this. It's not that easy. It's not that hard to get started and trying it out. So from Smarking's perspective, we follow a 5x ROI philosophy. So if we make $1, we want our partners and clients to make $5. It's very low risk. We can set it up on the Roi platform. You can try it out and then, yeah, see how it works. You can turn it off anytime. I'd say it's, again, set and forget, extremely low friction. All we need from you is one email to green light the operations, and then everybody else will get it done for you between Roi and Smarking. And then you can smile just like Peter. Well, I've seen numbers going up. Todd, any thoughts on your end in terms of from a results of observation, anything from your perspective? Both
Peter's the absolute expert here. So, what from his perspective we saw, I think this is a great case study and would seem to mirror things that we're seeing in our own experiences.
Thank you, Todd. So yeah, one last thing I'll touch on, folks. This is a public case study we have on our website, which we published and actually had another web session earlier in the year, I think February, together with some of the market leaders from ABM, talked about how in the pandemic year 2020, on the chart you can see on the right-hand side, again, everything is downloadable from our website. You go to smarking.com/case studies and so on. What we did was in this a few New York locations, we were able to deploy it, and all of a sudden in Q3, while the market was recovering, we're beating 2019 numbers. And again, it's the same thing as we all just talked about. We quoted John Leaf here. And again, I'd say these are just the concrete results that we're seeing. Doesn't matter if it's peacetime or what time. Pre-pandemic, we're increasing the revenue. Post-pandemic, we're reducing the loss and really actually trying to beat the 2019 numbers is how I would put it. Please, yeah, feel free to check it out, and there's PDF downloadable, everything's there. Okay, so with everything being there, I would love to just, on one hand, put together a summary here, on the other hand, see if there's additional thoughts from Peter and Todd in terms of recommendation to our partners and clients and friends in the industry. See, okay, in the rest of 2021, how do we really leverage off technology and do some good work and then really capitalize on this post-pandemic growth? So very high level, from our perspective, it's pretty clear throughout this discussion that today everybody's leveraging everything possible to get demand, to get volume, get revenue. Leverage online sales channels, in our view, is going to give you the edge to make it flexible, contactless, and easy and visible for the consumers and demand out there. So that's absolutely important. We've heard how Peter leveraged off a lot of different opportunities and technologies, and what is Todd's observation when it comes to the advantage of this. That's just how the world anticipates. If people are ditching public transportation and ride share and wanted to park, you got to make it easy for them to find it, to pay for it. That's the basic things that we should do. Number two, implement dynamic pricing. The marketplace changes so quickly. We all wanted to do more with less resources and staff, and how do we make that happen? Human beings set the box, computer algorithm play in the within the box, and then really do the work for us. Make it automatic, make it automatic, make it painless, make it just so easy for us to take advantage of the technologies. Why the hell only Netflix and Amazon could take advantage of machine learning? We can as well in parking. That's how I would put it. At the end of the day, this is now, yeah, Todd said it's a table stake. SN owners like Peter expect, this kind of technology to be deployed within their portfolio. So that is an expectation. It's only going to be higher and higher. And to Peter's last point, that there will be one day if you don't have it, you're going to lose. Not that when we're still in the zone of if you have it, you're going to win and beat the market. So might as well just go ahead. Any other additional thoughts, recommendations, Peter, Todd, from you guys?
So I mean, I wouldn't call it a recommendation, and perhaps it'll probably come up in the Q&A section. But we've talked about the benefits of this platform, and it'd be nice if folks can just get a sense of how Smarking also, benefits from this, from a, like, what do you guys charge for this service, and how is your revenue model aligned with success of the tool?
Thank you for that question, Peter. And Todd, I'll answer that question quickly. Todd, if you have anything to add beyond that.
Yeah, I'll hold my comments at the end. I think Peter raises an interesting question. I don't want to interrupt the flow there.
Absolutely. So thank you for the question, Peter. And at Smarking, as I mentioned, we follow a 5x ROI model that if we make $1, our partners make $5. Now, from a format perspective, we have two options for you. One is a subscription fee. The other is a percentage fee. Now, for the percentage fee model, I'll explain that typically pre-pandemic, what we see is results before and after. It's actually 100% of uplift. So 5x ROI will be 20% of the delta, and we formed this amazing partnership with Roi, so we can help you to process it through a 10% of the gross fee. That is anticipating the result being 100% plus of revenue uplift. However, and we have four frameworks to help you to measure the results before, after, compared to the rest of the market, and we take out all the factors of seasonality, everything, understanding the market is changing very quickly. So that's one thing. We follow very closely with the 5x ROI format, and then you can go philosophy, and you can go either format, flat fee, subscription fee, or the percentage fee. But the net result is 100% plus increase. Now, for the locations, people are going to ask, do you have every location just work out like a charm? No, not necessarily. Statistically speaking, we don't know everything. Technology is good, but not perfect in a way that sometimes we see about 5% or so of locations, they're good locations, it's just not working out, except those, especially those low volume locations. Then for those locations, we can always craft, in general, we can always craft programs for you to try it out, but for those locations, if it's not working, we would recommend you to turn it off as well, and then we can just turn it off, no questions asked. Because on Smarking's end, it does incur cloud hosting costs and computation costs, and we believe the best thing to do is we pick up a lower hanging fruit, work on those locations that are going to give us the best results, and then just focus on this for the time being. And then over time, when the volume generally comes back, we can expand it and so on. But we take a very subtle location by location approach together with our partners and clients. It's not like that once it's set up, we're gone. No, we work with you very hands-on. We have designated account and customer success managers to work with you to consult on the data, to make sure that you understand what's going on and you have a forecast of what's to happen, and then we can always measure it. That's, after all, our strong suit, or how we started the company. So hopefully I answered your question there, Peter.
Sure did.
Thank you. All right, so folks, we have 5 minutes left, and I think we've got about 20 questions. We may not be able to get all of them, but let's just go through them quickly here to make sure that we're gonna be able to, let's get as many as possible. So first one is from Scott Felter. His question is, how is a visitor parking defined? So yeah, that's a simple, visitor parking is just transient parking. We use that terminology. For on-street, it's all pretty much transient. So let's move on. What tools or, from a question from Arthur Lamb, what tools or software is best to implement more automated dynamic pricing? That's a great question, Arthur. I'll take that one. And Peter and Todd, if you guys have other input. So tools or software. So here at Smarking, we have a tool, rather a product called Automated Yield Management. Essentially, that is Smarking's dynamic pricing engine. That's the answer to the industry that we have deployed. Again, tens of markets in the US, hundreds of sites deployed together with our great partner Arrive on the Parkway's platform, and we've seen great results out of assets like what Peter manages. To do that, though, you do need online sales platform like what Arrive has, Parkway's, Best Parking, everything. Any additional thoughts here, Todd and Peter?
I think you guys have the only solution.
All right, thank you. From a question from Larry Israel. I know Larry is the VP Parking at Hertz Investment Group with lots of properties. If you do not use dynamic pricing, how to provide flex rates without eroding your current revenue stream? Any thoughts, gentlemen?
So yeah, I think, look, there's, I would say that there's always a notion, you know, when you start selling more things at different rates, that people may jump from one thing to the other. But I think anything that's taught us in the past 10 years or so that users are going to gravitate towards what users want. And if you're not going to offer it, somebody else will. And we've learned via lots of online platforms that far exceed Arrive or any of our stuff, that consumers are driving the equation now, and their ability to make choices drive our desire to give them as many choices as possible. And so I'd rather capture that customer in 3 other products and probably pick up new ones through my marketing efforts than risk that customer jumping and leaving my existing revenue channel. That's literally the essence of that research I did on cannibalization, and it's a well-founded fear and concern that's existed for 50 or 100 years in all of American businesses. But happy to share some research there that all kinds of academic research from lots of other industries that have shown more often than not that you get the availability effect where you're actually increasing the number of customers more than you're eroding and cannibalizing existing customers.
Thank you, Todd. So basically, yeah, this is the direction. This is the history trend. There's no going back, essentially. Any thoughts, Peter, or we can?
No, yeah, I think we keep going.
All right, question from Nazir Askari. Are there online channels that Smarking scrape to get info on consumer search for parking by region area? That's a great question. So answer is, short answer is yes, Nazir, we do get consumer searching information, but not from scrape, from our great partner, Arrive. They have amazing insights in terms of in different regions and nationwide, how the consumers search for the parking sessions. And even better news, Smarking publish on a weekly basis as of today the industry trends from a data standpoint, similar to what I showed in the beginning of the session, but on our blog section. And the online searching index part is very kindly empowered and partnered up, made possible by our partner Arrive here. They collect dates in almost every market in the US with millions of, tens of millions of consumers information in terms of when it comes to the search. So yeah, there's insights there and it's published through a partnership, and please feel free to check in on. But we do not scrape. Can you, a question from Arthur Lam, can you use the product, can you send the product link? Absolutely, I will provide the contact info and follow up notes with this session, and we'll provide all the links there to make sure you can follow up. Question from Kelly Brown. What has been the reaction of parking customers? All right, Peter, Todd, what has been the reaction from consumers?
I mean, they love it. The fact that they can get rates that kind of match what's going on, at the time they're looking for parking, like it's been great. And we see it in the traffic or in the transient volume. Like if we see a rate when demand isn't really there, you see a ton of parkers coming in to capitalize on that rate, and then that increase in demand for it pushes the rates up. So it's a self-rewarding system, and the parkers love it, and we love it as well because we're getting them in.
More options for consumers. Todd?
I'll rest on Peter's comments. I think he covered that one perfect.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, folks, I know we're cutting into the ending mark, and we still have about 15 or so questions. We won't get into details over there. We'll make sure to circulate all questions with our panelists and then get back to you. I do wanted to give it a shout out loud to the folks who asked the questions. Michael Ellis, Brian Shaw, Ed Simmons, Kelly Brown again, Arthur Lam again, Sharon Garnett, Bruno Lopez, several questions. Holly Parker, Nazir again, Kelly, I'm sorry if I'm saying your name incorrectly here, Kelly Toisakilo, Todd Marshall, Pedro Momahara, and Eric Reed. Thank you guys very much for all your amazing questions. We'll make sure to circulate the questions with our panelists and get back to you with our recap notes. Again,
and just to jump in, guys, I just wanted to point out, I sent a link in the chat box. So if you'd like to schedule time with our team to talk one-on-one, please schedule a meeting with us. You can get started with dynamic pricing for free, and we can share more about the details, give you a consultation for your specific location. So please use that link if you want to schedule some time with us. And like Wen mentioned, everyone who submitted a question today, we're going to reach out to you personally after the session.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Again, Peter, Todd, such a pleasure. Thank you guys so much. really excited what we can do in 2021 together.
Thanks for the time. Appreciate the
Excellent.
invite.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone for attending the session.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Yep. Bye-bye.